call Dennis O'Rourke.
Mr Chairman, I want to talk about this government's appalling record on transport infrastructure. We've often heard speeches in this House about RONs, but we never hear anything about rail, because this government doesn't care about rail. It only cares about more and bigger roads. And that's a forlorn strategy doomed to failure, as shown in many places worldwide. A good arterial roading system is essential, but that does not mean putting all the eggs into that one basket, leaving other land transport modes a basket case, which New Zealand rail has certainly become. Rail in New Zealand is grossly neglected by this national government. Funding for capital development of rail is pathetic, and maintenance in many areas is clearly underfunded. The saga of failures of the Cook Strait ferries alone proves this.
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. I'd like to hear what the member is saying. There is too many other discussions going on. If one wants to talk, that's what the lobbies are for. All right? I'm calling Dennis O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I was saying that the saga of failures of Cook Strait ferries alone proves what I've been saying. It shows that rail is being run down across New Zealand quite deliberately by this government. Rail in Northland needs special attention, with neglected lines failing to attract customers because of the sheer poor quality of the product offered to them. The line to Northland must be improved if the port's to anything like realise its potential. And the Napier-Gisborne line remains mothballed, damaging economic viability for many exporters in that region. And here's what one of them wrote just this week, and I quote, "Transferring product moved by road to rail has huge implications to our area. During peak season, we are restricted by the amount of trucks we can obtain, and transport cost increases with volume. However, transporting this volume to rail will decrease transport costs to port, making Gisborne competitive," unquote. And, Mr Chairman, I would also have to say that if New Zealand is going to have any hope at all of meeting its climate change obligations, we cannot do it with a run-down rail system. Our only hope, in fact, is to reduce the growth of transport of road freight and by investing in rail freight. And that's in fact what the road transport industry itself wants too. New Zealand First, of course, has a much better policy than this national government. We have, instead of RONs, a RONI policy, railways of national importance. And that's a strategy to redevelop rail in New Zealand, properly funded through a single land transport fund, giving rail the priority it needs. Now turning to regional roads. Despite desperate promises for the two-laning of 10 bridges in Northland during the recent by-election, Minister Bridges will actually only, in fact, build 4 of them, as now set out in the NLTP, confirmed by this month's Northland Regional Council Transport Committee. So it's clear that the Minister has no genuine plans to widen more than the 4 bridges currently budgeted, when only 3 more are part of corridor studies and may be considered in the future. And as for the remaining 3 of the promised 10, I quote from the report, "Government may decide on an investment approach," unquote, for them. This maybe approach to 6 out of 10 promised bridge widening projects for Northland shows the Minister's duplicity on that matter, promising one thing and delivering less than half. He may be Bridges by name and by promises, but not by promises fulfilled. And this is a good illustration, in fact, of the national government's failure everywhere on transport. And as I've said, that's seen by a run-down rail system, run down actually quite deliberately by this government, by not properly funding the infrastructure which the country needs. Poorly funded regional roads and totally inadequate commuter rail for Auckland. Mr Chairman, this is all caused by a government which has not the remotest clue how to invest to solve New Zealand's transport woes. Its approach is non-strategic.
Mr Chairman.
Dr Meagan.